I believe that there are two different types of scientific mindsets. One who believes that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. The other being that they're the people that grasp on the three-word phrase that Walt Disney said a long time ago that inspired many generations: just keep moving forward. But when does one need to stop moving forward because one has gone too far? Well, that's what I want to discuss. Are there times when science has gone too far? Well, first my answer is no. And this is assuming that science is defined by the scientific method, or in which something has the purpose to prove a point where that can make a difference, solve a problem, make something new, or pioneer the world forward. Now this can be called true science, or something with a true purpose. But the other side of this can be called corrupt science. Now corrupt science can be described as scientific research or breakthroughs that were achieved with the sole purpose of destroying, hurting, or giving you the upper hand in the conflict. Although science has the ability to scare, but for example, nuclear power creates thousands of tons of highly radioactive waste each year. And in addition, we all know nuclear plants are highly unstable. And in many cases, nuclear reactor plants have accidents, which cause thousands of deaths. And also, people that are located downwind of the radiation are more likely to be diagnosed with forms of cancer and leukemia. However, over the years and with multiple sacrifices in that field, corrections have been made with the probability of, with a small margin of error in which a nuclear reactor will malfunction. But we also know that nuclear energy provides more power than solar and wind. And all this is created by taking risks and sacrifices for the greater good. But of course, I'm not glorifying nuclear plants. They do have their dangers, and they should be taken away, gotten rid of. But why do we go too far? If we go too far, then why do we have to go there in the first place? If we had the chance to go too far, why did we go there in the first place? And it is needed to go far from It is needed to go far from society belief for the betterment of the people. And as T.S. Eliot once said, only those who are willing to risk going too far can possibly find out how far we can go. But we need to remember that when people do things that seem too far, it's most likely cause for the betterment of society. But some people might disagree with this. The atomic bomb, for example. And it was hard, but when the question is asked that includes the word sometimes, it's hard to be sure that we can find examples of scientists or scientists that can go too far out of the bounds of prescribed ethics. But one does come to mind, the scientist that crossed the line was named J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, harbinger of death, and destroyer of worlds, self-proclaimed. And these harbingers' tools in these cases were the atomic bombs which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which killed nearly 300,000 people, according to CNN. Now obviously this is way too far, no contest. But this is in no way a true science. It is science that bleeds corruption, to which the sole purpose of this creation was to cause massive damage and casualties. And it was not a creation that was made in the name of science. The only thing it was meant to prove was to see how much destruction can happen when you split an atom. And if you don't believe me, this can be proven when the creator of the atomic bomb, Robert Oppenheimer, said, "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds," after the first detonation of the first atomic bomb. Let's switch topics. Next we can talk about cancer. But if you had the choice to either save 10 million people, but in return you have to sacrifice 1,000 humans and animals, which one would you choose? Well, this is the question that goes through every medical professional's head when creating a cure for a disease. But did you know that that 8 million people this year are expected to die from cancer-related causes, and 12.7 million people are estimated to be diagnosed with cancer, and 300 million people in this moment currently have cancer. Now, testing for drugs and to find new cures, you need to use animals and human testing to be able to find a cure. Now, over 100 million animals are currently tested each year, according to the Humane Society. Now, this is important to finding a cure because literally, if we did not have this and we just gave the cure to humanity without testing it on other beings, the humanity would literally turn into I Am Legend. But in conclusion, we know that science has the ability to scare people about its ability to captivate modern society and how much it can do and how far we can go. But we as humans have the right to understand and interpret science and progression made, and thus need the capability to understand our universe further through obtaining this knowledge. So of course, most certainly, I disagree and strongly believe that science cannot go too far. But if you follow the basic guidelines of using the scientific method to be able to prove a purpose that can make a difference, solve a problem, make something new, pioneer the world forward onto new frontiers, then I say go ahead, study, invent, create, and discover to your heart's content. Go.
Anthony, some comments?
Okay. I thought the speech had a lot of good appeals to emotion when it came to the atomic bomb and how the nuclear power plants lead to deaths. But I honestly I thought you were against science the whole way until the end when you said that science hasn't gone too far. And then there was also no preview of the beginning of the speech, of how the speech was going to go, so I was kind of confused most of the way. And there's also a lot of pauses and reading off of the note cards, but I don't know. I like science, so I thought the speech was okay.
Science.
Science.
She blinded me with science. All right. Look, you've got an idea here about the distinction between what you say is true science and corrupt science. I think you need a better argument as to what distinguishes the two. It's very, there's a value judgment that you're making here on the one hand, and the suggestion that splitting the atom is done for only the purpose of seeing how much destruction can result, I think would probably run counter to what a lot of scientists say is the whole process. That's what it gets used for, but that's not necessarily the purpose in that discovery process. I think there's a problem making the assumption that you can distinguish between what true science is and what corrupt science is unless you have a stronger explanation of how we determine what the criteria are and that they apply in that situation. I thought you were all over the place on the topic. It's an interesting topic, but it's unclear as to what it is you're trying to say about the topic. You describe some things. At first it sounds like, oh, nuclear power sucks, and then it's, no, it's great, and then it sucks again. I'm going, okay, so how's that going? And then we get to the discussion of atomic weapons, and there's a presupposition because Oppenheimer had regrets about it that was bad science, although there are plenty of people, when you mentioned the example of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there are plenty of people who would suggest that that's the same choice that you were talking about with the animal research. You sacrifice some animals and some people in order to save more lives. There are a whole bunch of people out there who would say you saved a huge number of lives by ending the war using those atomic devices. So we're back to the same question, how do we decide who gets to choose what constitutes corrupt science and what constitutes true science? And I don't think that your criteria are clear enough for us to be able to make that decision. Presentation is really problematic the whole way. You're reading constantly. You're having to flip back and forth between the notes. Sometimes you're reading things that you don't seem like you are clear on what it is that you're saying until after you get halfway through it. That's a problem. I like like I said, I like the subject. I like some of the concepts in the subject, but it needs to be turned into a much clearer argument. It needs to be delivered a lot more effectively. All right, thank you.